And we are live. Hello there. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Let's Talk Fishing podcast video version. My name is James. I'm going to be your host. With me tonight, I have Captain Scott Allen, who's going to talk about Green Bay Walleyes. I mean, that's one of my, I have so many good memories of that place. Wow, what a cool place to be. Anyways, I'd like to announce that the Garden State Outdoor Sports Show is going to take place from January 6th to the 9th of 2022. It's going to be at the New Jersey Convention and Exposition Center in Edison, New Jersey. And I'm very pleased to announce that the Northern Illinois Sports and Outdoors Show is going to take place from January 13th through 16th of 2022. That's 4 days of sports shows, guys. Promises to be a good one. And that's going to be at the Lake County Fairgrounds in Grays Lake, Illinois. Go on in there, walk into the Grant Rods booth, guys, and tell them Jay sent you. Speaking of the Northern Illinois Sports Show, I'm very proud to have a walleye guy on by the name of Scott Allen. How you doing tonight, Scott?
Doing great.
Doing great. Man, you know, that place you live up there is one of the coolest places in the world. I've been all over the place. Man, I've been all over the world. And Green Bay, Door County, the Bay of Green Bay, one of my favorite places. Gosh, there's perch. They tell me there's trout there. There's smallmouth bass, and my God, there are some amazing. There's a lot of walleyes in Green Bay, but there's freaking monsters. There's a lot of walleyes in Lake Erie.
Yep.
And some big ones, but there are freaking monsters in the Bay of Green Bay. I just love it.
Yeah, definitely get some big fish, and it seems every year when we have the tournaments come into the bay here, they just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, the bags. It's unbelievable.
Wow. One of the things I'd like to get out of the way right away is, what's the biggest one you've had in your boat?
Biggest one I had in my boat was actually, the longest was a 32 1/4.
Woo!
And that was caught during an AIM tournament, Pro-Am tournament on the bay. So it was actually the largest one caught in the AIM up until the last year of AIM, and Jim Bell beat it with 32 1/2 on Lake of the Woods.
Oh, no.
But that's a big fish. That was a long fish. But a lot of 11, nice 11, 10-pound fish in the fall.
Scott and I were talking before the show, and he tells me, no, I don't like the troll. And I'm like, wow, a walleye guy who targets the big water, who would rather jig. What a rare find this is. Because I can remember back in the day when I was following the PWT around, the In Fisherman Professional Walleye Trail, I would beg those guys, and I had to go to a tournament like, when at Lake Winnebago to do something else other than troll. Back then, in the 90s, all the guys were trolling. And here you tell me you like the jig.
Yeah, it's when I grew up fishing, I learned how to fish. I was a jig fisherman. We have the Wolf River, the Fox River here, where a lot of the fish migrate up. So that's how I learned to fish. We never trolled. And when I started tournament angling, that was new to us, was we had to learn how to troll. But when we came to tournaments where we could, were jig tournaments or river tournaments, we always loved it because that was kind of our bread and butter. We really liked jig fishing. And up here on the bay, with the structure we have with the rivers and the sand flats, the weeds, you can pretty much go out any day and jig walleyes.
Wow. And when are you using the jig walleyes on big water like that?
Such a variation of techniques. In the spring of the year, when the walleyes are coming up to stage, they'll actually move in the shallows outside our rivers and stuff. And they'll kind of wait for that river water temperature to warm up before they move up and spawn. So that time of year, we throw a lot of, this is one of the go-to baits here. We'll actually be throwing rippin' wraps.
Rippin' wraps, okay. So that's
little Rapala rippin' wraps. We do a lot of this, and we throw a lot of just a plain jig and plastic. We'll run a tube tail or a paddle tail, something that's got a lot of vibration, and just work it slowly off the bottom. And those fish just smack it in the spring of the year. They're really doing the vibration and stuff, because they're not really eating in the spring when they're getting ready to spawn. But once they're done spawning, they'll pull off along our shores, and they just really are looking for that warm water to put the feet on. And you can catch fish just about every cast. We also do a lot of minnow baits, hard baits, glide baits, kind of what we call them, are glide baits. This is the Moonshine Shiver minnow.
Shiver minnow. Okay, I've heard, you've been on the show before. You told me about shiver minnows. Could you put that up a little bit closer?
Oh, sure, yeah.
So that we can really see that?
Yeah, this is probably my most favorite bait right there. It's a shiver minnow. If you notice, they don't have the hook on the nose. They just have the hook on the tail and underneath. And when you pop them up, they'll just glide down. You pop them up, they'll glide down. And when that nose hits the sand, it gives you that kick and kind of triggers that bite. So that's a real popular way. What's that?
Are you using that for vertical jigging?
No, all casting. We cast everything. Water up here is really, really clear. So in the spring of the year, what we're concentrating on is we're going along the mouths of those rivers, and we're checking for the warmer water, which we have a lot of current on the bay. And some days it'll be flowing out into the south or out into the north. So the bait fish will congregate in that warmer water, and that water will be the muddier water coming out of the rivers. So you'll be fishing clean water where you can see 20 feet down, and you'll be casting up into 6-8 feet of water of the cloudy stained water. And that's where we're catching long cast.
Okay, so you do a long cast. You keep your bail open so that it will go straight down.
Yep. Long cast. I use a lot of 6'6" medium heavy rods. Something that's definitely got some backbone to it. I use Berkeley crystal line, which is just a line that's got no stretch. I can see it real well because it's a white line. And then we'll run about a 6-foot fluorocarbon on it for a leader, and just cast them out as far as we can and locate the fish. Now with the electronics, you can pretty much just go cruise up and down the shores around those mouths, and you can mark your fish on your side scan. And it really takes so much of the guesswork out. I run Garmin electronics right now, and that side scan is just absolutely amazing. You can see those fish, you can target those fish, and you don't have to be on top of them, which that's just such a big thing when you're fishing the shallower water in the spring of the year.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, jeez.
And a lot of it's temperature. And when we're looking at temperature change, especially in the spring, we may be talking, for the most part, a half a degree to a degree of water temperature. That's about the only variation we'll get. And that water can be warm, and we can have in 15, 20 minutes that can change and that can move. So you really have to stay on top of the warm water, and that's where the fish will be going, looking for those little cricks that are dumping in, especially if we have high water in the spring. The drainage ditches and stuff will really dump that muddy water in. And when the sun comes out, hits that muddy water, warms that water up a little bit more, and those fish will just be a magnet in there.
Wow. Yeah,
and we'll get a lot of big fish, but they will be post-spawn. But if you want to go just catch some, I mean, you can get into them where you're catching a fish cast after cast after cast. It's really fun. It's a great way to learn how to cast jig, where you're actually working that lure back, the jig back. Even, I call it jigging when we're throwing the rip and wrap, because we do the same thing. We throw it as far as we can. We let it just vibrate and hit the bottom. You want it to hit the bottom, and then we'll snap it up off the bottom. And you want to feel that hit the bottom every time. And that's usually when all our bites occur, is as that bait's going to the bottom. No matter whether we're using the shiver minnows, the rip and wraps, or the plastics, it's all on that fall. And then when we get that the water really cools down and it really got those fish in a negative mood, we'll just run the basic old hair jig. There's nothing.
Oh yeah, I've used a lot of
Nothing
jigs like that.
works just as good. Nice big hair jig like that.
Now, do you put a minnow on that?
Nothing. Nope. We
No
just
minnow.
test it out. No minnow, no anything. And we do that a lot when the water gets cold and we have a little cold front come through. And you'll just basically drag that. It's a hard sand bottom. And you'll just drag that. You don't even have to pick it up. A lot of the times you'll just drag it. You'll cast it out and you'll let the boat go, or you'll wind real slow and stop. Because what a lot of these fish are doing in with our sand now, we have the invasive species, the gobies, and that is one of the main forage base of the walleyes is our goby population. So the gobies are swimming down, kicking up that dirt, and when you're dragging a hair jig through, it's game on.
I bet.
A lot of fun.
That does sound like a lot of fun. That sounds like a lot. So are you doing this in the actual river or
We're doing both. You can do outside the river mouths. You can do inside the river. Some of the rivers are a little bit smaller where you'll do a little bit more casting and short jig, because the rivers are pretty loaded with debris and stuff like the Peshtigo and the Oconto, the Menominee. So we do fish them, but there we'll fish a lot of kind of short target areas and get them that way. Another bait that's real popular for us is just the basic blade bait.
Oh yeah.
Same thing. The rivers and the water is so muddy that they're just keying in on such a vibration. And these lures, all these paddle tails that have the ribs on them, there's so much vibration that they're just keying in on that vibration. So that's all you're really looking for in the spring of the year is something big, a lot of vibration, something that they can key in on, till the water warms up a little bit. And we do the same thing, the Fox River, all that same technique. I fished a tournament 2 years ago. It was in the spring of the year on the Fox River. And it was a head-to-head tournament, which is kind of a new format that they had just come out with.
Oh, sure.
A couple of years ago. And I started off my day pitching ripping wraps. And when that died, I went to throwing hair jigs. And one of our popular hair jigs are these hammer time. They
Look
have
how small that thing is.
the foil, short foil bait.
Sure.
Because everything's live. We can't use any live bait in the tournaments.
That looks like a white bass jig, but you're catching huge walleyes on it, aren't you?
Yeah, it's a mylar,
Sure.
salmon fly or coho peanut fly type thing. It's mylar. Hammer Time Jigs makes them, and I just been having great success with them, with and without minnows on the river itself. But that tournament, I was throwing these. When these stopped going, I was throwing hair jigs, and we were working that. When the hair jig stopped going and you really needed something with a lot of vibration, we would go right down to throwing the blade baits. Every one of those had its purpose and produced fish during a 4-day tournament. And you just had to let the weather dictate what you did, because we had the water temperature dropped on us, and we were fishing in 20-degree weather with some wind and snow. So the fish were very, very lethargic, and you really had to work everything slow. But you can with all these baits. You can work them super slow in the spring of the year.
So you're going to be at the Northern Illinois Sports Show, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm going to be there, and I'm going to be have a booth there, and I will be giving seminar there also. And I'm going to be discussing tournament winning jigging techniques. We're going to be talking a lot more in depth about different ways to fish the jig, different ways to fish the plastic, the hard baits, the blade baits, and the swim baits.
Nice.
Because there's so many different ways to do it. And you'll go out there and you'll see 5 different people doing these 5 different ways. And most of the time, you'll only see one of the person catching the fish. Not all the time, but you really got to change it up if it's not producing and adapt to your conditions.
Wow, that sounds like an interesting seminar topic.
Yeah, they should be really good. You should be able to get a lot of information that you can use on Lake Erie, the Detroit River, Saginaw Bay, Saginaw River. Any place we go, I fish Sault Ste. Marie, the river up through there. There's just the St. Mary's River. There's so many places that I've fished in the United States that are river systems. The Illinois River, the Missouri River. It's just a lot of rivers around, and people have been so used to trolling them for a lot of years. Now you're seeing a lot of that trolling get overtaken by people working just nothing but a jig rod.
That was something that was interesting that you just brought up there, because when I first started fishing the Illinois River, I mean, way back, early 90s, I had jigged up on the Wolf River. I had, Wisconsin. I had jigged a few other river systems, the Wisconsin River in Wisconsin. I had fished a bunch of river systems up in Canada. And that was, you really worked your jigs. And on the Illinois, what I realized when I finally started catching fish there is I just picked up my jigs like 2 inches and just held them there. And I dropped it down to make sure that I was still only 2 inches from the bottom. And I would pick it up and just hold it there. And when I did that, the saugers would just hammer it.
Yep.
And I was lucky if I got just a little tip, if I was, working it too much. And so
you couldn't. That's one thing we learned throughout the years that no one told us about the sauger versus the walleye bite. That we were fishing up on the Mississippi River in Red Wing, and we were jigging and marking these fish, and we could not get them to go.
Yes.
Set the pole down, and all of a sudden, boom, it went. And you needed to drag that. You needed to drag that jig on the bottom, and you were getting hit every time.
Every single time, man. I could not believe how hard the sauger actually hit it, because the few that I did catch when I was working that jig would just barely touch it.
And walleyes are doing the same thing with these tournaments. That head event, we were mostly throwing a lot of these blade baits.
Sure.
And we were just letting them sit on the bottom, popping them up a little bit, letting them sit on the bottom, and the hair jigs. And almost 95% of our fish that we caught were not legally hooked in the mouth.
Wow.
They were going down. They were pinning that bait right to the hard sand, and we were getting them right up underneath. And we were fish after fish after fish, but we weren't getting them to actually commit and eat it with their mouth. They were just trying to smash it to the bottom and kind of kill it, because that's what they're doing with the gobies. They're smashing those gobies down. And so when things are happening like that, you do have to adapt a little bit to how you're fishing.
So how did you adapt to a fish that was just kind of saving it for later?
I was actually, I was giving it a little more of an aggressive jerk, and right as it was hitting the bottom, I was snapping it back up right away. A lot more aggressive, and I didn't get as many bites, but the bites I got, they inhaled it. You eliminated 95% of the fish that were just not committal, but the ones you got were slamming it. The blade bait was gone.
Blade bait was gone. Man, that's exciting.
And it's fun because you see them. I'm going to have at the show a little video of that tournament we had, because we had a cameraman in the boat the whole tournament, all 4 days. And I ended up actually winning the tournament, but the last day I was using hair jigs, and then I switched over to pulling some crankbaits, and I was marking fish on the side scan in this little cut in the river, and the water had cooled down. And I told my cameraman, I got to throw one cast with the blade bait in there. And I threw that cast out, and this was all, he was recording it, and took about 4 casts, and you could just see the line go tight, and I just slammed it, and that fish gave me the win in the tournament.
Nice.
On the very first cast, marked the fish, casted the fish, and caught the fish all in one cast. It was just like you write a script about it, but that doesn't happen like that very often.
So the fish actually, man, that's one thing that I learned, when I was taping for Midwest Outdoors, that fish are camera shy. But
Oh, they are.
That
They
fish
are very.
actually cooperated with you.
I told him I made 3 passes trolling, and I told him, I said, I cannot not throw a blade bait in there. And so I just wound everything in. I hit spot lock. We got right to that spot. I had a mark. There was just a pile of fish on side scan. And I threw into there, and I think it was about my 4th or 5th jig. And it just crushed. It was, 3.5 pound fish. But
sure,
that was the fish that put me over the top for the victory, which was pretty cool to call the cast and call the fish.
Man, that Fox River, I fished there when I was younger. We would take off from Illinois at midnight, be up there at 6, launch the boat about 6:15, and then leave at noon and be home for 6 o'clock on a Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
We called those suicide runs. So much fun. But all I can remember is that we caught big fish and we lost a lot of jerk baits.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you're casting baits up into the rocks and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That used to be the way it was. Everyone would go up to the dam,
yes,
the rock structure, and that's where the walleyes there. They casted crankbaits, lost a bunch of them. And when I started fishing back in the 80s, late 80s, 90s, tournament fishing, we would fish. We always had some tournaments here on the Fox River. And my partner and I, actually, we won the second one we were in, the third one we were in, and the 4th one we were in. And all of them were all just fishing with a hair jig and a minnow. And we were fishing down on sand structure where those post-spawn fish were up feeding. We never went up to the dam like everybody else. We fished down, and the proof was in the catch. I mean,
yes.
It was, and then eventually people started getting that, so you got to start going downriver,
So you didn't have to play bumper boats.
No, we were by ourselves for years and years and years, and now there's hardly, most of the boats will go down that way, or it just, things evolve, especially with social media now. There's no secrets anymore. Techniques just get so fine-tuned so quickly that when a bite is on, people can really get there and work it and do well, be really successful and follow those fish.
That's interesting. You say you started out with jigs and minnows, because I started out with up there at least with minnow baits. You like jerk baits, like the Rapala.
I was a little bit younger, and I didn't have quite the wallet to do anything, so a lead head jig was about all we could use. We just didn't go through all those baits. We didn't really have any help. Everything we did was on our own, but we caught big fish. The first tournament we ever fished, we took 3rd in it, but we did have big fish of the tournament, which was a 12-pounder that we caught, and that was just strictly a hair jig and a minnow. So we've been very fortunate through my career and the guys that I've been fishing with and stuff. We really have gotten lucky with some big fish. We usually do well with catching some big fish. And most of the time it is with a jig. With a jig, or my favorite go-to bait right now, hands down, is what we're talking, the Shiver minnow here. It's just one of those baits that when I'm casting it, I know I can catch a fish every cast. And so you learn to do. It's a technique that you have to learn, and that's what it should be really nice down in Illinois. I believe they're having the hog trough down there, and I'm going to be casting these baits and actually able to show you the different ways that they work in the water, which that's going to be, I think, really neat to see how some of these different baits work.
That is going to be neat. I hope you can, man, that's going to be fun to show people that. What time of the year will you use? Will you use the Shiver minnows all year long?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
The whole open water season?
We'll use them in the spring, and the best time is really once we start getting on the reefs. We catch them all June, July. We'll catch numbers of predominantly male fish. On the reefs, we're only fishing 6 to 12 feet of water. and we're just fishing little rock piles in amongst the sand reefs. So you don't want to fish shiver minnows where there's a ton of solid rock, because there gets a little bit tough with the zebra mussels. But when we target, especially in the fall of the year, which is August and September, we're targeting the big sand, hard sand flats, and big rocks, big boulders. And we will target specific fish. We will mark a fish on our side scan or on our live scan, and we will mark that fish, throw a cast to that specific fish, and work that bait. And it's just something. It's something you have to experience, because there will be fish in 15 to 20 feet of water a lot of the time, and far cast, because you can see bottom.
Yes.
And so you only get about 4 jigs. So we'll be throwing long bombs, and usually you'll snap it once, and when it hits the bottom, it'll just never hit the bottom. Your line will just snap, and you just crack it as hard as you can. And these fish have these big 3.5-inch baits, right? You can't see them; they're gone. And
Wow.
It's so much fun. It is really.
That sounds like it's. That
Once you do that, you get so hooked on fishing that way, that if I could have one thing, I'd have to say it'd be a hair jig or a shiver minnow, because shiver minnows are a little tougher to fish when it's super, super cold, because you can only slow them down so much. But they are just, you can catch fish all year round with those, and big fish.
Man, that sounds like a lot of fun. So when are you going to start guiding?
I usually start. I don't do a lot of early river guiding in the spring. I've kind of come to it really gets to be hectic out on the Fox River nowadays. It gets really, really non-relaxing to say. So I usually wait till kind of the main rush is done before I start. So kind of end of May, mostly into April, is when I'll start fishing. And there I will usually fish the bay outside some of the smaller rivers up the west shore, like the Peshtigo, the Oconto, the Swamico, the Menominee. And then I don't guide up in Michigan, but I do have a lot of fun fishing the Cedar River, Ford River, just all the way up that whole shore. You can just start down south and just keep working your way north. And it seems the farther north you get, the bigger the fish get. Lot of fun. We've got it so lucky here with the fish. I mean, I'm the Fox River Dam here. I'm to the boat landing in about 6 miles. So
wow,
I'm pretty spoiled here. 10 minutes and I'm on the water in 10 minutes from my driveway.
That is. I don't think I'd ever be home.
Guys got to rest once in a while.
Yeah,
but no, it is fun. The fishing is it's fantastic. And then we have the summer fishing for people that want to troll crankbaits. You can troll crankbaits, because a lot of people just aren't familiar with jigging, and they don't have the technique. And when a person books a trip, and this is your trip that you're going to do this summer, you want to catch some fish. So a lot of the time we will troll. And when I troll, 99% I'm trolling a hard bait. I troll a lot of Berkeley flicker minnows, just the basic, basic flicker minnows.
Sure.
And I love trolling these little baits, the rattling wasp.
Really?
Oh yeah, these little tiny baits probably been my best producers. Come in all different colors. I actually started using these on the St. Mary's River. Kind of very similar. Salmo hornets are very similar to this.
Yes.
Now Salmo hornets have come out with the hollow rattling ones. These are a plastic bait. These rattling wasps are a plastic bait that have the rattles in them, and just slow, and they really, really put off a lot of vibration again.
So you don't troll crawler harness?
I troll crawler harness primarily if I'm fishing a tournament in July or August.
Okay.
I will fish a crawler harness. That's where I'm going to get my biggest fish, I believe. When I'm guiding, I only will troll. This year, I did not troll crawler harnesses one day guiding at all.
Wow.
I troll crankbaits, and it just we cover a lot more ground. We have a lot less with the white perch and with the yellow perch, just bite offs and nip offs with our crawlers and different things. I can just cover a lot of water, and it's just the proven way to go. You definitely can catch a lot more fish with the crankbaits when you're working the reefs and stuff like that. Then you just can't keep up. You can get the bait right back out, where crawlers are just very labor intensive. But if I'm going to go to a tournament where I want to catch a big fish out here on the bay, I'm pulling a crawler harness, and I'll be running it generally at about 0.9, 0.8 miles an hour, very slowly. And I will be running it anywhere from 6 feet to 10 feet down in 20 to 32 feet of water, always in that upper water column in the summer months.
So now I know what I was doing wrong.
And that's where we get the big fish. The big fish, our bait fish will be feeding up in the summer months. The big fish, you'll be marking them on the bottom, but when you get the big clouds of bait fish up high, that's where you're going to get the big female walleyes up in that top. That's 8 to 10 feet down. We're not running much deeper than that, getting the boards way out away from the boat, and just a super slow presentation.
Okay.
So it changes up whether I'm guiding, fun fishing, or just looking for a trophy where I'm only looking for 5-6 bites during a day. Where a lot of times with customers, we'll troll crankbaits, we'll get a limit, and then we'll go out into the deep structure. We'll put some crawlers on and just try for a trophy. But
yes,
we get them with the Shiver minnows. We get them with the hair jigs that we just really don't. We don't run night crawlers that much anymore. I don't personally, and I know a lot of the guides that I work with, very, very few of them run night crawlers during their trips.
Wow. Things have really changed.
It's changed. It's really changed a lot. But the baits, look at what we have out there. And I think the biggest thing is with our electronics, you just can't compare the electronics we had now to 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 20 years ago. Or I started fishing tournaments 35 years ago.
Yes.
It just developed so much that it's kind of crazy, how you can fish specific fish. You're just not wasting the amount of time you used to waste, just trying to locate them, see what they want, see how they're reacting. I mean, with the Panoptics, you cast out, you see the fish, you see him reacting to your bait. You know if he wants it faster, if he wants it slower. It's all in real time in front of you. It's hard not to figure it out.
I agree with that. Yes, the way things have evolved. That's why I like to have the podcast. I can stay on top of that, even if I'm not up there, which is really cool.
Even the precision trolling data app. I mean, that is one piece of equipment. If anybody has any one thing in the tackle box, you want that app on your phone.
That's just so funny you say that, because I can't tell you. I used to have 3 of those books. I'd have one of them in my truck, one of them in my boat, and another one in a watertight bag in my boat, because invariably one of them would as soon as I got up there to fish a tournament, I'd open it up and it would have a white beard on it, because somehow it got wet. How did you get wet?
Yeah.
And it was a tough book, but they didn't make them like other books. It was really tough, but it's just funny the way that's why
they didn't have the material. Now they'll have them laminated, the add-on ones that they still will do, but you do it all on your phone now. It'll tell you. I mean, as soon as a new lure comes out that year, pretty much they have it all figured out, and they have that app that bait's on your app.
That's something else. Yeah, when I was fishing back, fishing walleyes back in the 90s. Yeah, you're right. I had to buy a new book every year. Just so we could fishing back then,
We used I don't know how far you remember, but Willie's made planer boards. If you remember the Willie's, the old orange planer boards. They were made down in the valley, and Willie's made a little capsule that was like a little torpedo. You ran off a 3-way. You would put your crankbait and you'd run that down, and you'd run it for 2 minutes down, and then you'd wind it up, and then you would read the depth it ran. So that's how you could figure out kind of how deep your bait was running by doing that. And we'd have to do that to every bait. We didn't have line counters at that time. Everything was a pole. Willie's made metered line where they actually had a different color band on it every 10 feet.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of like lead core line, yeah.
Yep, but it was mono. And every 10 you counted how many you had out. And, you were guessing everything. A lot of times, if you went over a little rock pile, then you could just kind of figure out how far out you had to be running at that depth. Where now you just go to your phone, you pop it in, what speed am I trolling at? Am I going to be putting a snap weight on it? Everything right there. You look at your electronics, the fish are here. You want to be running a bait a foot to 2 feet above them. You dial that in. There's just so much of the guesswork that's gone nowadays.
There is.
And people are so efficient. I mean, you watch these guys out there fishing, and you look at these weights that the tournament anglers are bringing in and stuff, and it's just unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. Hey, well, Scott, do you have any shout outs you'd like to make?
Yeah, I love the rattling wasp baits that are by Vexon, and I do use the Vexon jigging rods. They are some of my favorite rods.
Why don't you put that up to the camera?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you can see that. Is
sure.
It up one or no?
Yeah, we can see that.
Yeah.
I'd like to see the wasp bait too.
Yeah, I do that. And then I am also running these rattling wasps.
Wow.
Very, very nice bait. They come in some different sizes, but on the bay here, predominantly we're fishing perch. Perch is one of the forage or the gobies. And that's why with the gobies, we're running the golds and the purples to chase the gobies, and we do the same thing with this. We'll bang these off the bottom, and those fish will just go crazy on them. Also, these foil jigs I use, the Hammer Time jigs. He's actually out of Green Bay. Some of the best jigs. You want to put a jig and minnow on and do saugers or walleyes in the spring of the year if you want a vertical jig or just drag them. I think that mylar just gives off so much of a reflection that it really adds to the minnow presentation, because not a lot of times you can use shiner minnows. You can't get them stuff, but you can put a fathead on there, and they really seem to enhance the bait and are good fish catching baits. So yeah, and Moonshine. I mean, I'm not sponsored by Moonshine or anything. I have won probably more tournament winnings fishing their baits, their Shiver minnows, than any other bait I've ever fished other than a leadhead jig. It's just crazy how those baits have really brought walleye fishing along, the different designs of those baits. And that's what I was talking about, the big Shiver minnows. And you go by size. They come in all different sizes, and you do the depths, larger size for the depths, but just a very, very simple lead jig. But how they reacted, how they shoot up and fall down and shoot up, they can't resist them. So yeah, that's some of the things. And when I do troll my crankbaits, I do run gator boards. There's a lot of different board companies out there. I prefer, I like these boards because as I'm getting older and the weather's getting cooler, they got a bigger pinch pad than some of the other ones. I like the big pinch pad. And then another thing, this is a cam lock on it. You put your line in and you just cam it and it's locked.
Okay.
And when I grab that board, all I have to do is hit that pin and it comes loose. And this has a pin in the center of it. You cam it, it's locked, which really makes it easy for one-hand removal. When you're grabbing that board and line, you just flip it and it goes. It also does come with the feature that it does have the tattle flag on it.
Tattle flag, yeah.
Yeah. I don't generally use tattle flags because I'm pulling hard bait crankbaits most of the time. So it's just something that kind of gets tangled up when you got multiple fish on. So usually I'll just pull them like this. But for people that have not, have the problems of pinching the small pinchers on the clips and stuff, these are some really, really, you won't go back once you try these. Very, very nice system that they have. And that's Gator boards. Take a look at them, try them. I'll have all this stuff at the show too. If you're able to make it to the show, come take a look at it, and we'll talk about it, and I'll let you know exactly why I like the stuff I use, because I'm really not a gadgety type person. What I use is what catches fish. I don't have a lot of time to play around. I'm out there every day. We need to catch fish every single day because we have customers out there. And when I do get a little fun time that I can fish a tournament or two, we're trying to win, trying to do the best we can.
Okay. Well, yeah, guys, we'll come on over to the Northern Illinois Sports and Outdoors Show, and you can actually talk to Scott. He'll be there. If he's not speaking, he's going to be at his booth, promoting his guide service. Just go on over there and talk to him. And, he has a lifetime of walleye experience. And that's Northern Illinois Sports and Outdoors Show. It's going to take place January 13th to the 16th of 2022 at the Lake County Fairgrounds in Grays Lake, Illinois. Also, for you guys out east, the Garden State Outdoor Sports Show is going to take place January 6th through 9th of 2022 at the New Jersey Convention and Exposition Center in Edison, New Jersey. Scott, I'd like to thank you so much for coming on the show. I know that you're a busy guy, and you're a deer hunter, and this time of the year is busy for us deer hunters. I'm
heading up to the cabin right after this, and we're just starting to get our ice shacks all ready for our ice fishing. We do a lot of whitefish, walleye, and perch fishing through the ice. So nice. we have a short season up here on the bay, usually 6 to 8 weeks, but we'll be gearing up for that too. And if anyone's looking to get up and get on some big through the ice walleyes or some fun whitefish action, definitely can set you up with that also.
Well, like I said, Scott will be at the Northern Illinois Sports Show. And also, if you want to call him, his number is right there. Yep. And they can contact me on Facebook or my website, allensguideservice.com. And you can get a hold of me all different ways. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'd like to thank you again for coming on the show, man. I know you're a busy. Thanks for having me. I'd like to thank everybody for coming on, for viewing in on the Let's Talk Fishing video podcast. My name is James with very special guest and walleye aficionado, Scott Allen, Captain Scott Allen. Thank you, Scott. Thank you.